Alright guys, today we're playing Battlefield 2042 in 2025. Believe it or not, it's been 4 years now since this game's release back in 2021. And I remember all the hype that this game received, and everyone was like, oh my god, Battlefield is back. It's gonna kick Call of Duty's ass this year. I mean, it was going up against Call of Duty Vanguard, which turned out to be one of the worst Call of Duty games ever made. And the other big FPS game that year was Halo Infinite. Battlefield had a golden opportunity to really take some market share out of the FPS market, but they didn't. Despite how horrible Call of Duty and Halo failed with those games, Battlefield turned out to fail even harder. Yeah, I really wanted this game to be good, and it certainly got better from where it was at launch. Still not good, even to this day, even after all the updates. But all the updates they did was pretty much to make the game less shitty, but not actually polished and an amazing experience and a great game. It's an average game now. I mean, after they fixed the maps, they brought back the class system from the older Battlefield games, and they, kept improving things slowly over time. It was too little, too late, in my opinion. I know it's a live service game, so they should have all the time they want to fix it, and it doesn't have to be a great game at launch. I don't care. Like, if you don't get me interested in the game when it comes out, I'm pretty much not going to care anytime after that. And I've tried to play it again a couple of times here and there over the past few years, and I've just, no, it just didn't really capture my interest and my attention like other games. Even Battlefield 5, I was way more hooked into that game than 2042. I think what stung the most was that they killed support for Star Wars Battlefront 2, a game that was really starting to hit its stride. And if it got a few more updates, if it had maybe another year or two of support, it could have ended up to be one of the greatest online shooters ever made. But they killed support for Battlefront 2 in order to completely focus on development for Battlefield 2042. So one of my favorite games ever died so that this game can be made. And so that could be, it was still rushed as hell. Like, that was the thing, too. Like, they clearly were not ready to come out with a Battlefield game in 2021. It was not the right time. They needed to wait another year or two, and now we're already getting another one this year or next year. It's like they never learn. The gameplay just doesn't feel right to me, and I've played every single Battlefield game except for maybe Battlefield Play for Free, but that's pretty much just a free-to-play reskin of Battlefield 2, so I've played all the Battlefield games. I even played Battlefield Heroes. This is the least satisfying gunplay that I've ever experienced out of any Battlefield game. The guns just don't feel right to me. It's hard to describe. Like, you really have to play the game to understand what I'm talking about, but the recoil and the sounds and everything is just off. And the design of the weapons are, just kind of okay. They don't really stand out. They're not memorable like a lot of the guns that we had in Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, even Battlefield 1 had a lot of standout guns that were like, wow, they really put a lot of time and effort into crafting a high-quality online multiplayer experience. But this game just feels bland and boring and devoid of any personality or charm. And when you make a video like this and you're critical of a game, you run the risk of attracting people who are fans of that particular game. Like, whenever I make any type of negative commentary towards a game, it's always like the fans of even the most obscure games, Skull and Bones. People are like, oh, what? You can't hate on Skull and Bones, it's one of the greatest games ever. I'm like, okay, so, hey, there's going to be a lot of comments, there's going to be a lot of disagreement, and that's fine. If you can keep it respectful, that would be also very nice. Because we're at the end of the day, we're talking about video games, right? I'm saying that I don't like the game. I'm not saying that I think that people who like the game are stupid or there's something wrong with them. I'm just saying that I personally do not recommend this game in 2025. Despite it having crossplay, which no other Battlefield game has, so that's a huge plus towards it, that it doesn't matter if you're on PlayStation 4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC. Everyone can play with each other, and I think that helps as far as the player base is concerned, because it's still very easy to get into matches. I think if crossplay was not a feature in this game, that would be a different story. Like a lot of the other older Battlefield games, depending on which platform you're playing on, you're not going to find any players, but this game, there is no such problem. So that might be like the one reason why you might want to play this, is if you're on PlayStation, your friends on PC, you both love Battlefield, you both want to play together, this is pretty much your only option, right? So you gotta also talk about the positives. It's not all negative. And I also really like the weather effects, the environment. That was one of the huge selling points of the game that is kind of not really as big of a deal as they made it out to be, but it's kind of nice to see, like, the desert storm and the tornado, and it's like, it's still, like, just jumps at you like, holy shit, this is insane. Kind of, once you've experienced it, like, 3 or 4 times, kind of like the Levolution in Battlefield 4, it's like, okay, I've seen this and dealt with this before, it's kind of just, kind of there now, I don't really feel anything anymore towards it. But it's definitely a cool thing to experience for the first time, like, as a new player. Also, I like the sector control, the way that they changed the conquest mode to have it where you have, like, instead of just capturing B, you have B1 and B2, and in order to fully control the objective, you have to have both sectors, and it creates, like, really close quarters engagements and, like, intense gunfights, and it gets really crazy sometimes. And you got 128 players, which a lot of people attribute to the cause as to why the maps were not really that good, because they're like, okay, we have to go big. We have to go from 64 to 128. So we're going to design these maps that have some interesting things in it, but it's really just mostly just big, open space, devoid of anything. It's just empty. And that's why the maps were really not good at launch. There were a lot of the maps that came out at launch that they actually fixed over time through updates. They added more content, more buildings, more just stuff to do in the map. So they did remedy that quite a bit. And there are rumors that they don't think 128 players is worth it anymore, and they're going to go back to 64 in the next game, which would be interesting. I don't know how people are going to feel about that, because a lot of people feel like 128 was a step up above 64. I mean, having just the most amount of players in the game is a lot of fun. It's a cool novelty. If anyone remembers that game, MAG, on the PS3 from 2010, had 256 players at the same time on a console in 2010. The PlayStation 3, like, it's still insane that we had a game like that came out 15 years ago and hasn't been replicated since. Even Battlefield isn't even close to, like, it isn't even like half the player base that game had, like half the player count, I mean. But yeah, I would just recommend, if you can, to play the older games instead. I mean, it's pretty apparent that this game was not that great and the quality is not that good, when if you look at the Steam charts and you look at all the metrics, Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1, despite being games that came out years before 2042, have more players online and, like, have more populated servers. Now, probably I would say overall, like, you know, Battlefield 2042 is the easiest because of the crossplay, but there's still a lot of players on all platforms, whether you're on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC, on the older Battlefield titles, going back to Battlefield 4. So there's a lot of Battlefield content for you to enjoy and to explore, especially for the first time. If you're new to the series, maybe you're hyped up about the new game that's coming out, and you want to just kind of see what this series is all about. Because remember, like, 2013 doesn't feel like that long ago. I was a sophomore in high school when Battlefield 4 came out, but a lot of people who are watching this video may not have been born yet, so I'm just trying to tell them it's okay. Just because it's not the newest, shiniest game, it's actually still really good. Like all the other Battlefield games, Battlefield 1, 4, and 5, I would recommend over this game 100%. So that's really all I have to say, is just, hey, if you want to play this game, I'm not gonna stop you. You know, if you're still not convinced and you just want to try it out, I understand. The curiosity might just still get to you, and you're like, I have to at least try it. You know, there are a lot of bad games that I've seen a lot of negative reviews for, or just people having a lot of bad things to say, not a lot of good things to say about the game, but I still want to play it, because I need to experience it for myself. So I understand that if that's what you want to do. And obviously, if you have EA Play or Game Pass Ultimate, you can just download the game right now. You don't have to pay anything for it extra. That's the same thing with all the other Battlefield games too, just so you know. But I would say it's probably the worst Battlefield game ever made, which, to be fair, is not that horrible compared to, like, most other game series. Where if you're talking about the worst Call of Duty of all time, oh my god, there's like 6 or 7 contenders for that title. But with Battlefield 2042, I'd say like the worst Battlefield game, which is 2042, is still better than half of the games that come out in other game franchises that, yeah, I mean, it's like probably like a 5.5, 6 out of 10 if I had to like do a number scale rating out of it. That's probably how I feel, ultimately. This game was definitely a turning point for the series, and not in a positive way. A lot of Battlefield creators and people who I knew back in the day that were, like, just all in on Battlefield, after this game, they just kind of fell off the radar, or they moved on to something else. There's no coincidence there. It's obviously has its few diehard fans that are going to proclaim that it's underrated gem, and it's amazing. Trust me. There's so many better options out there that you should play instead of Battlefield 2042 in 2025.